look into the different types of interventions that were used. Firstly, let's look at the behavioral exposures, the positive reinforcement type of therapy that was used. In this, the boy was rewarded for showing less fear and actually handling the buttons in vivo exposures. So the difference between vivo and vitro exposure that is also constantly asked in the CI exam and heavily tested on. Vivo exposure is being exposed to the fear stimuli in real life, like actually handling the fear stimuli in real life or seeing it in real life. And vitro exposures are basically imagining the fear stimuli and imagining your experience with it. So in this case, the behavioral exposures are going to be known as vivo exposures. In this, the boy was rewarded for showing less fear by his mother. As the boy completed successful sessions of handling more and more buttons with each session that was progressed with, his mother provided contingency management. The boy completed successful gradual exposures to buttons, and um, the sessions probably lasted around like 30 minutes with the boy and 20 minutes with the boy and his mother. So let's move on to the results of this intervention that was used. The results reported that the boy's distress did not decrease, when in fact it increased from session 1 to 4. At the first session, his distress levels were at 6, but at the fourth session, when he had completed all his vivo exposures successfully, his distress level increased from 6 to 8. He also reported showing increasing fear for stimuli that he had shown like less fear beforehand. Like for example, the medium plastic denim jeans buttons, or hugging his mom while she wears large plastic buttons. Those were the kind of stimuli that he rated like a 5, but after going through these vivo exposures, they became around 7. So this result was inconsistent with our theory that this that even though this type of therapy was successful in targeting fear as an emotion, this did not target disgust as an emotion, as the feelings of disgust remained completely unchanged, or they even increased as the sessions moved on, right? So as we see that here, the boy, the number of buttons that were manipulated, increased from 1 to 4. Like at first he was just handling around like 6 buttons, but at session 4 he was handling around 35 buttons. But what we see is that his distress level increases dramatically from session 2 to session 4. At session 2 it was at 6, but now at session 2 it was at 8. So this was not successful. This actually made the situation worse. So let's look at the second type of therapy that was used. Second intervention, discussed imagery and cognitions. Now we are going to look into vitro exposures. The boy had at several times the boy reported that he found buttons disgusting and gross, but he could not actually give a reason that why he thought that buttons were disgusting and gross. So the next 7 sessions were involved in manipulating different kind of disgust related imagery and cognitions of buttons, right? So the boy was asked to imagine everything that he found about buttons disgusting. He was asked to imagine like hundreds of buttons falling on him, and he was asked to imagine how they felt, how they looked, how they smelled, right? And the session progressed from very larger buttons to smaller ones. Remember, in our 9 point feelings thermometer, the larger buttons were like shown to give less distress, lower distress to the boy than the smaller ones. So to take it a little easy on him, the session progressed from the larger buttons to the smaller ones. But we also saw that even after a lot of probing to the boy, it was very difficult for him to describe what was actually wrong with the buttons or what was actually disgusting about buttons. Right? So the results. This kind of therapy, vitro exposures, was very successful in reducing the boy's disgust related emotions with buttons. It was very successful. We see that um, for stimuli like imagining hundreds of buttons falling on him, his distress rating decreased from 8, which was at session 1. His session 1 for that, for hundreds of buttons falling on him, was at 8. Midway it came down to 5, and then it reduced from 5 to 3 at session 3. So now we are seeing a lot of success, a lot of change in his distress. His distress has been decreased successfully by vitro exposures. Now, so this tells us that we do not only need to target the emotion of fear, but we also need to target the emotion of disgust that's associated with buttons, right? Um, we also need to look into different kinds of therapy that could target the emotion of disgust rather than fear. And this kind of therapy, like imagining the buttons and the disgust related to buttons, are very important in maintaining a phobia and like treating a phobia, right? So let's move on to like the ending part. Like, so there were like post treatment 6 to 12 month follow up sessions with the boy. They re-administered the ADIS-CP. It was the anxiety disorder interview scheduled child and parent versions. It was re-administered with the boy, but he no longer met the criteria for buttons. Now he was very normally just wearing plastic buttons on his uniform shirt on a daily basis. Now he was completely normal. He did not face any more difficulties in his life. Some of the conclusions of this study that we can think are, firstly, emotions and cognitions relating to disgust are very important when learning new responses to phobic stimuli. I think this is actually the very first case study that looked into the emotion of disgust, as like there is always this perception of phobia related to fear. Like fear is definitely there, but there must be something else also, right? So this study was the first one who discovered an important emotion along with fear that is involved in the exasperation of phobias, which is disgust. So it's really important. That's the first conclusion in the study. The second one is imagery exposures can have a very long term effect in reducing distress associated with specific phobias, as it tackles negative evaluations, right? So the first one is that we discovered a new emotion that's related to phobias, and second one that is that we discovered a new kind of treatment that can be used to reduce a phobia like this that has a lot of that has the emotion of disgust playing a very important role in it. So that was all. Um, I hope these videos were very fruitful for you all, and I'll see you next time.